Commissioner Corey,
Here.
Commissioner DePaul,
Here.
Commissioner Kovacevic,
Here.
Commissioner Schlossberg,
Here.
Commissioner Seavam,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Watts.
Here.
And number 3, do we have call to the public, any cards?
No, Chair.
Well, this will be quick then. Right to number 4, consideration approving the regular minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sounds unanimous to me.
6-0.
Okay. And right to number 5, consideration and possible action amending zoning ordinance section 2.03, temporary use permits. John, take it away.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And whoops. There you go. Okay, good to see you all this evening as we hopefully start to move out of summer, maybe into fall. As most of the commission knows, and Commissioner Seavam, we've been slowly working through an update of Chapter 2 of the zoning ordinance. Chapter 2 sets out all the procedures for the different things we do, site plan reviews and special use permits and rezones and so forth. We've already finished the sections 201, 202, and 204, dealing with zones, special use permits, and site plans. So the one I have for you this evening to consider is section 2.03, temporary use permits. So this particular section has been a little bit of a challenge for the time I've been here in Fountain Hills. When I look back in the files, I see we have issued temporary use permits and administrative use permits. I see nothing in the code currently about administrative use permits. And so I've had to use this as an opportunity to try to sort that out a little bit and provide some clarifications on those. But temporary use permits, as the title would imply, is for items of a temporary nature that people want to do from time to time. Some of those can be a little bit longer uses that we'll talk about in a minute, and others are just kind of weekend type activities. But as we've gone through here, a lot of it has stayed the same, but have worked to structure it like the other sections of this chapter, as we've talked about before in terms of application requirements and those procedures and how they're laid out. But the first major change that I've added here is under the purpose, this item number 2, for a requirement, just making it a little bit more clear about when a temporary use permit is required, and create the distinction between the temporary use permit and the special event permits that go through the Community Services Department. And so anytime somebody wants to do something of a temporary nature that's not envisioned with the original site plan, then that's the type of thing that we're looking at. A few examples are listed here of outdoor displays, farmers markets, such as the peach market that happens, that comes through us for the temporary use permit, that type of activity. And we'll hit a few more here in just a second on this next page. So the zoning ordinance does list several specific things as temporary use permits. You see a list of some of these things here. Probably one of the main ones is the model homes. So up in Adaro Canyon, where they have the model homes, they have temporary use permits to use those homes on a temporary basis as sales offices. Those temporary uses last several years, but they come in, it's issued on a yearly basis, and they come in and redo that each year as they go through that process, and eventually they'll build out and then they'll turn it into a residence. The application section, again, we've amended it to be similar to what we've done in the other sections of this chapter in terms of its format and flow of what's required. And so this lists those items, filled out online, get a project narrative, a site plan, and then any additional information that might be needed. And here's one of the places then where we distinguish a temporary use permit from an admin use permit. So those things that are listed in the code specifically as temporary use permits, those then have that fee and that requirement. Otherwise, some of the other things of a temporary nature, again, such as the peach market, it's not something that's specifically listed in the code or somebody who's doing that type of activity. We treat that as an administrative use permit. It's a slightly less fee because there's less involved. Review procedure, review the application submitted, make sure it's complete, and get any additional information we may need that wasn't included, and then staff review. And so the action as listed in the code is done administratively, and it has the statement in the code, the action of staff shall be one of approval, as they meet the requirements of the code. And then in this section, we added a provision that a copy of the permit to be maintained on the site. So if there's ever any question about whether or not they have an active approved use permit, they should have it there to show that that's the case. And then there is the provision on transferability. So again, such things as maybe the model home. Different builder takes over the facility, they can transfer it to the new builder, that type of thing. Appeal, just made a couple of minor changes here. Right now it says the matter shall be appealed. Well, what if you don't want to appeal it? So change that to may, and then to make it clear it's the applicant that can appeal a decision if we've required things that they don't like. Time limits, made a minor change here. It did say that the time that the use permit become effective on the day of issue. Well, sometimes, we'll issue it several weeks or days in advance. And so it really ought to start on the day that the event begins. And no changes in the revocation. And that's this section of the code.
Commissioners, questions?
So there's some overlap, or the examples you used were some of the more home-based businesses that could require temporary use permits, like a swim school, you said. Are they still subject to, they are still subject to the same home business rules that we've talked about prior?
Yes, Commissioner, if that's where the swim school is taking place, and that's where they usually do take place, they would have to get a business license and get the be compliant with home-based business or the specific rules for the swim school that are listed in the code.
So they're still subject to the 6 trips in and out of the.
I believe that specific one has a slightly different standard that's specific to that use, but there are those requirements in the ordinance that have to be met.
Yeah, okay. But there's no exemption. But getting the temporary use permit, don't become exempt from.
You're not exempt from the rules of the code.
From the rule, okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Whatever they may be.
Commissioner Corey?
Yes. John, you were speaking kind of fast for me there a minute ago when you were talking about the peach market. Can you confirm that is a temporary use, not the administrative use, correct?
So they're all temporary uses. They all fall under this chapter, but the main difference is what fee we charge. The temporary use permit fee is $250, I think. Paul, is that right? Do you remember?
I think.
$230,
Yeah.
as opposed to the administrative fee, which is $50. And so when it's something that's not specifically listed in the code that's pretty simple, then we will charge them the administrative use permit fee. They still get a temporary use permit, but that's the
So
distinction.
it's still considered temporary use, but
Right.
then it's just two different fee structures.
Right.
Got it. And then, so when we get these applications, how do we determine whether or not it's approved? Like, is that, I thought I read in there that may come to the planning and zoning to approve if these are, out of the normal?
Vice Chair, Commissioner, that it's all done at a staff level. Any appeal of our decision goes to council.
The appeal would go to council?
Yes.
Okay. And this is all done in TOPS that?
Yes.
Okay. Just one thing I noticed, I did look through the list today, and temporary use permit wasn't under permits section. It's actually under development projects.
Yes.
And so that's the way it should be?
Right. Just like special use permits, they're a creature of the zoning ordinance, not the building code.
Okay. Seems like, I hope that, people know where to find it. It was kind of challenging for me to find it initially.
Yes. It can be for people who aren't kind of familiar with how things are structured, organized, but we'll always help them out, and there is information available
Okay.
on the website that helps point people in those directions.
Okay, or maybe on that page that they're directed to on TOPS before they actually fill out their application, it could say in the development section that this is where you'll find these kind of things, but just to make it a little bit easier
Sure,
for them.
we can look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner DuPont?
Yeah, John, so once, just to make sure I understand this here, once you've received the application, you go through an initial review just to get back to the applicant on what's missing. They get back to you, and then you start the initial review process. And after that, they make the payment. Or they make the payment before I didn't understand.
Vice Chair, Commissioner DePaul, the payments are due at the time of application, so after that initial review, and we accept it as being ready for a formal review, we'll tell them they need to make the payment. And so we'd make that determination in that initial review if it's the higher fee or the lower fee.
Okay. And so you mentioned here utilizing standard review timeliness, timelines and procedures. Can you just shed some light on the standard review process and timelines? I'm just trying to discern here how much time it takes to actually, for the applicant to actually get his application. And if there should be something in here stating, you know, the time that is allotted for them to get back with you, or.
Vice Chair, Commissioner DePaul, it's been a while since I've looked back at the formal stated review times for this type of use. I think it's someplace in the nature of 90 to 120 days. Typically, we have it done in less than a week, often the same day, because they're usually very simple.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner, got it? John, I've got a couple. The first one was when an applicant can submit an application for a temporary use permit, but it also says a designated person. How do we know that they're an authorized person to submit? Do we have, is it a notarized statement from the owner? Is it something that we can, or do we just take their word for it?
For this particular activity, it will depend a little bit, again, on the peach market. I keep pointing to that, but we ask for something to be submitted along with it from the property owner, saying that they've authorized them to use that property. If it's clearly that it's the owner of the business at that location or property owner of the business, then, you know,
So we
don't
got
need
something
anything
from
else, but-
Tractor Supply that,
yes,
on their letterhead, so to speak.
yes.
And then in item 3, we talk about drawings to scale. What scale is that?
In this case, a lot of them are print out an aerial and
Okay.
show on there what you're going to do, because it's pretty simple. But if it's something more complicated than that, such as the model homes in the Adaro Canyon, then that's a formal site plan that is drawn to, you know, the appropriate scale for the size and so forth.
But we don't say something that has to say, that currently says there can be something, an alternate to a scaled drawing. So
Right.
should we have something in there that says, or comparable site plan, comparable overhead, something that would give somebody some latitude? When I first read that, I thought, how many people that do these pop-up tent deals, whatever they are, can do a drawing to scale? And then the question becomes, what scale? Not that there's innumerable numbers of scales, but
So the last sentence in that, the zoning administrator may allow modifications to these requirements, which we frequently do, because a lot of them are pretty easy things to understand. Again, you can use an aerial, print off that image, draw on there where you're going to set up your tables and how you're going to route your traffic, and we understand it, and you know, that's good.
so that's the
And so-
intent of the last statement, to give you some latitude, give
Correct.
permitting department the latitude to be able to do that.
Correct.
And speaking of Adaro Canyon, I didn't notice that there were any extensions available. Do you have to resubmit in its entirety because there's a 2-year limitation on the permit itself? Is there an extension process, or is there a resubmit process?
It's a resubmit process.
Okay. When the applications are submitted, and I'm going to use the peach market again, do we look to food handler permits when we talk about temporary permits, or is that something outside our purview?
That's outside our purview a little bit. We look to the applicant, that they need to make sure anybody that they bring into the activity has their proper permits and approvals.
Okay. And I think that covers it for me. Commissioner Schlossberg?
Yeah, question, John, just so I'm clear, and I don't think I am. I'm going back to the swim school example you used. So are we saying if I, at my residence, choose to operate as the owner, or are we talking about somebody else that's choosing to operate out of my residence as a non-owner, or either?
Chair, Commissioner Schlossberg, I'd have to pull up the swim school rules to make sure I remember them correctly. We've had the first one of those that I've had to deal with come up this last year, and it ended up not being approved because she was trying to operate out of somebody else's home, not her own.
Okay, so let's go back to the prior example where it's my home and I'm going to operate my school, and I go and I get my business license to operate. How am I told that I need a special, am I told when I get my business license that I need a special use permit as well?
So when you apply for, be the temporary use permit, when you apply for that business license, it comes to planning for review. And yes, we would look at that and let you know that that's
Okay.
what you need.
That's what, thank you.
Commissioner Corey?
Thank you. I just thought of one more thing as it relates to trash, cleanup. Like, how do we approach that? Would it be the responsibility of the plat owner?
Sure, yes. Again, Vice Chair, Commissioner Corey. Yes, that's one of the things in the project narrative. If they don't include it initially, we will ask them. Again, it depends on the use, but how are you handling, trash, signage, those types of issues, lighting, any of those types of things that might be appropriate to the given activity. If they're having, seating, where's that and how does it relate to traffic patterns and if they're rerouting traffic, how are they doing it in a safe way, that type of thing. Mm-hmm.
Commissioners, any other questions? Then we'll go ahead and close the public portion. And Paula, do we have any speaker cards?
No, Vice Chair.
With that, can I get a motion to approve? Or deny?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
So moved and seconded. Commissioner Kovacevic and Commissioner Corey. All in favor?
Aye.
6-0.
Thank you, John. And item 6, Commissioners, any requests of John and staff? Go ahead, Commissioner
I
Corey.
do, just one. Just a reminder, I know I brought this up a few meetings ago, was the PowerPoint presentation. So I know we had talked about if we could get that, if it was ready, maybe before our meeting, because when I see the presentation, it puts everything together for me from what I was reading. Maybe not tonight, because it was a very short meeting, but when we have longer meetings, if I had that a little bit in advance, it would really help me out.
I'll try to remember that, Commissioner. This time, I did have it done earlier. We could have sent it to you. It's usually the longer meetings that you want to see it, and that we're working up to the last minute to get it done. But we'll try to remember to do that if we can.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Commissioners? Moving on to our requests from John.
So, Commissioners, I guess inform you that Vice Chair Watts, a couple of meetings, brought up some issues, concerns with some traffic, scooters, bikes, and so forth, and we've been able to identify maybe the better approach to handle that and gotten in touch with Public Works and the committee there to talk about that issue. So just in case you were wondering what was happening with that, it is being looked at by the town, and thank you for bringing that up.
I wasn't going to bring that up just because I didn't respond to you and Director Weldy.
Yeah.
Wells. Yeah.
We're working on it.
Okay.
So mentioned a little bit as we were getting started, just in terms of October meeting. At this point, we could have up to 6 items on that agenda, 5 special use permits and 1 rezoning. I'm pretty sure of at least 3 of those. And how sure are we on the other 3? Do we know? Pretty certain about one of them. Okay. So again, it should be another good meeting.
That sounds like it could break all records. Are you going to produce dinner?
Maybe so. Maybe so.
Okay.
So just be ready for that.
Yeah.
That's what I have.
Commissioners, anything else? We'll set a record and adjourn early. Thank you, John. Thank you.